Let's start.
Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to the City Planning Commission Review Session for Monday, February 3rd, 2020. The time is 1:05 p.m. and a quorum is present. The first item on our agenda is a certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendments in Brooklyn Community District 16. Our presenter is Anthony Grande.
Okay. Good afternoon. This is a private application by Bridge Rockaway Housing Development Fund Company for zoning map and text amendments to facilitate the development of a new 100% affordable 7-story mixed-use development containing 173 units of supportive and affordable housing in the Brownsville neighborhood of Brooklyn, Community District 16. So the project is located, as I mentioned, in Community District 16 in the Brownsville neighborhood in Brooklyn. The proposed project area is the majority of the block, bounded by Rockaway Avenue, Newport Street, Thetford Avenue, and Riverdale Avenue, with a total of 79,000 square feet. The development site, outlined in blue on the map, is a 46,000 square foot through lots with frontages on Rockaway Avenue through to Thetford Avenue, and also a corner portion in the southeast, meeting up with Newport Street. The surrounding area is primarily residential with a variety of densities and built forms, with higher densities and commercial retail uses concentrated primarily along Rockaway Avenue as well as Livonia Avenue. The project area is within an existing M11 district, which is also found on 2 separate blocks, one just to the southwest and then another block to the southeast. However, the surrounding area is primarily zoned R6, which is a medium density residential district. An R7-2 district is located 1 block to the west, as well as along Livonia Avenue just to the north, which were recently mapped in the Marcus Garvey rezoning. M11 districts are low-density districts that allow commercial and industrial uses to a maximum of 1.0 FAR with a relatively high parking requirement. M11 districts do not permit residential uses. The project area is bounded on the west by Rockaway Avenue, which is the primary north-south corridor in the Brownsville neighborhood for commercial uses, as well as some higher density residential development and a bus line. It is also a wide street for most of its stretch, including most of the frontage on this block, except for a small portion which is 70 feet wide. The development site, outlined in blue again here, contains several 1-story industrial buildings, which had been used for many years as a chocolate syrup manufacturing building, but recently has been vacated. Additionally, there is some space for surface parking on the lot. To the north, within the rezoning area, are 2 non-applicant owned sites. On the Rockaway frontage, there's a 1-story commercial building with a laundromat. And on the Thetford frontage, there's a 2-story building with a warehouse and a house of worship. And then just directly to the north of the rezoning area on the same block is the Riverway Apartments, a 7-story building built in 2013. Which contains affordable senior units financed by city subsidy. On the southwest corner of the project area, there is a city-owned parcel within the rezoning area, which is used by a community garden, which is run by DPR's Green Thumb program. The area is well served by transit. The Rockaway Avenue 3 train station is about just 1 block to the north on Livonia Avenue. So this is a view of the project area from Rockaway Avenue at the street level, looking north. So in the center of the development, in the center of the photo, we see the development site with the existing one-story industrial building, and then to the right is that city-owned community garden. And then this is also the Rockaway frontage a little bit to the north, looking back south. In the center of the photo is the one-story commercial building with the laundry business. And then this is the southeast corner of the project area along Thetford Avenue and Newport. So the industrial building as part of the development site is also seen here. And then this is the view down Thetford Avenue just to the north, looking back towards the south. And here we see the other non-applicant owned site on Thetford, which is the two-story building with a warehouse and a house of worship. The proposed development would be a new 7-story, 183,000 square foot mixed-use building with approximately 39,000 square feet of ground floor light manufacturing space and 2,000 square feet of ground floor community facility space and approximately 174 units of supportive and affordable housing. The applicants are proposing a unique opportunity for a nonprofit, affordable, and supportive housing provider and a mission-driven industrial nonprofit to develop a new mixed-use model. The residential components would be operated by the nonprofit applicant organization, providing social services on-site for building residents. Supportive units would be for formerly homeless. Affordable units would be for families and individuals at a maximum of 60% AMI. The building would have a total FAR of 3.97. Building bulk is distributed into sort of two wings here. So closer to Rockaway is a 7-story portion, and then closer to Thetford Avenue is a 6-story portion. And this is designed to respond to different conditions on either side of the block, with Rockaway Avenue being a wide street, more major street, and Thetford Avenue being a narrow street. The ground floor of the proposed building would be a full lot coverage floor. The majority of the space would be the 39,000 square foot light industrial space, which would be divided into several smaller spaces to be tenanted to individual manufacturers. The ground floor industrial component would be managed by the Greenpoint Manufacturing and Design Center, GMDC, a nonprofit organization that specializes in tenanting light manufacturing spaces for smaller businesses at affordable rates. The applicants worked with DCP to develop zoning that supports the mission of both nonprofits, allowing GMDC to manage the ground floor space and manage the tenanting and permitting, which can also be cumbersome for smaller businesses. The space would be accessed by an entrance on Rockaway Avenue and would be served by a 2-bay loading dock, both of which are seen in the lower left of the image here, just at the northern edge of the site. In the southeast corner of the site, there would be an approximately 2,200 square foot community facility space with an entrance on Thetford Avenue. The residential entrance would be located on Newport Street. The proposed building, being 100% affordable and within the transit zone, would provide no off-street parking spaces. The proposed development would provide windows at certain intervals along the lot line with the community garden, as well as transparency at the second floor, common spaces, and the ground floor community facility space. The manufacturing space street level frontage would be sort of a mix of non-transparent materials and then also these vertical windows at certain intervals. To facilitate the proposed developments, the applicant requests 2 actions. First is a zoning map amendment, The project area is proposed to be changed from an M11 district to an M14 R7A district and an M14 R6A district, while mapping MX19 over the project area. You can see the R7A portion is mapped over about the western half of the block, which has frontage on Rockaway Avenue. So that's the higher density district, which is mapped along the wide streets, more major streets, and then the R6A portion mapped along the eastern frontage, which is narrow street Thetford Avenue. M14 districts are medium density industrial and commercial districts that allow up to 2 FAR for a range of commercial and light industrial uses, and there's no parking requirement in the M14 district. R7A districts are medium density districts that allow residential and community facility uses. Residential uses are allowed to a maximum of 4.6 FAR with MIH, and buildings must follow a contextual building envelope with a maximum base height of 75 feet and a total height of 95 feet. R6A districts are similar to the R7A, a slightly lower density, so only allowing 3.6 FAR for residential use and a base height of 65 feet and a total height of 85 feet. Second, the applicant seeks a zoning text amendment for 2 separate sections of the zoning resolution. So first is shown here, the amendment to section 123-222. The text of the added text, which is shown here, would create a new mechanism to allow mixing of uses that is more responsive and flexible to business needs and supports the mission of both nonprofits in the case of this application. The mechanism would require a restrictive declaration to be approved by DEP, enforcing building design requirements to allow the uses to safely coexist. The restrictive declaration would need to be filed prior to obtaining a building permit. It's expected that the restrictive declaration would include 3 main design elements: a separate ventilation system for the industrial space would ventilate air to above the roof line. Acoustic separation would be required between the ground floor and the upper floors, and vibration prevention systems would be required for the industrial space. And the applicant has built these measures into the proposed building. So finally, the text amendment also proposes to add an MIH area over the project area, which would map program option 1. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Question. Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you. Anthony, if you can, could you tell us a little bit about the nonprofit and that would manage the residential and what their area of focus and expertise is?
Yeah, I think they could talk more in depth about their expertise, but they are a nonprofit that does supportive services, and they do have supportive housing management. So yeah, they would provide supportive services on the 2nd floor of the building for building residents. And yeah, I think they could speak more specifically to exactly how they provide services and what their experience is.
Thank you.
Commissioner De La Luz.
I just want to say that I think it's great that the applicant is looking to mix a number of uses here, both the affordable housing, the supportive housing, and then the light industrial use. I mean, I'll certainly be interested to hear more about some of how they are approaching the design challenges, some of which you addressed in terms of the acoustic piece, and then some of it operationally. I'm just interested to hear that when they come for the hearing, because I think it's something that a number of neighborhoods, and this is a model that I think a lot of folks are wanting to replicate, and so they've obviously given it some thought, and GMDC certainly has a lot of experience in this area, and I wouldn't be surprised if they had some thoughts about 25 Kent and some other things that we've been wondering about for a while. So I look forward to hearing from them directly on Wednesday.
We were pleased that the first of the applications that came through with two sort of known entities. And we are watching this one closely because we can imagine that the flexibility of this model might be replicated. Commissioner Levin.
Yeah, and related to that, and in addition to the things I hope we hear about at the public hearing, I am a little concerned about the proposed street level view on slide 12. Looks pretty blank for the experience of someone walking by. I understand that the industrial tenants will have certain needs, but it also needs to relate well to its surroundings. I'm sure there's some choices involved there, but this doesn't look so great.
Yeah, and we've had similar discussions with the applicant team. So we do want them to provide enough transparency to, activate the street. And there's also privacy concerns with the spaces, industrial spaces. So it is sort of a balance.
Would they be putting signage up? The businesses that are behind those doors?
I don't know. We can ask them that.
Commissioner Burney.
Just following up on that, do you have any idea who these tenants would be? I mean, I'm assuming there won't be sort of steel smelting operations going on in there. It's got to be,
Right. Yeah, light manufacturing. So, there is a limited list of uses that would be allowed. The applicants provided sort of a general tenant profile for GMDC. They kind of expect similar tenants would be locating here. So manufacturers of custom furniture, advertising displays, ceramics or leather products. I think those are just examples, but these types of small manufacturers.
Yeah. So just following up on what Commissioner Levin said, it wouldn't be so bad if people could see what was going on in a ceramic place or something. It might be an opportunity. The other thing I wanted to ask was the community garden is currently operated and will continue to be so, but it seems to me during construction they're going to have a hard time not really disrupting it. And are there some measures in place to deal with that?
Yeah, I think the applicant can address how they plan to work around that garden.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Burney, to your question about GMDC, they actually have at least two major facilities, one at 1155 Manhattan Avenue in Greenpoint, which is where they got their start, but another one along Atlantic Avenue just past Pacific Place. And I think that their model at both places is largely the same. By having GMDC be the master tenant and then sublease the space, we think it will make it easier so that each individual user doesn't have to get permissions from DEP, but rather GMDC will handle it for all of the space.
This is David Sweeney's
former firm, a former entity. Yep. Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi. Along those lines, I would agree with the concerns on this space, and I would love when this comes back and at the hearing for GMDC to sort of speak to their tenants' needs and the degree to which the space, the size, the configurations, the also loading and unloading would be addressed with this use. And my question for you now is, what allowances are there for accessory retail? There are many instances where, a furniture maker, for instance, wants to be able to sell potentially, does the zoning allow for something that's an accessory use? It might already be there, but that's my.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, in the proposed M1-4 district, most retail uses would be allowed. So even aside from being an accessory use, there could be retail located in these spaces. So they could mix it. They could have spaces that were dedicated to that kind of use. It would be allowed in the zoning.
So that's another reason to think about this design, because the transparency to be able to see in and out is helpful when you have a retail accessory use, not necessarily manufacturing use, but that design doesn't give you that flexibility.
It's like what we saw at Industry City. Somebody's making hats, but then selling hats at the same time.
Yeah,
So
and
just that
increasingly
sort of-
that's what we're seeing. So you want the space to enable that. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, the application is certified.
Okay. The second item on our agenda, page 26, is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map amendment in Brooklyn Community District 2. Our presenter is Sarit Plotkin.
Good afternoon. This is a private application by All West Old Fulton LLC for a zoning map amendment to rezone the project area from M21 to M15 to facilitate the development of a 5-story commercial building with retail on the cellar, first and second floors, and offices on the 3rd through 5th floors in Fulton, Ferry, Brooklyn, Community District 2. The project area is located in the Fulton Ferry neighborhood, a triangular area bordered by the Brooklyn Bridge and Dumbo to the north, the Brooklyn Queens Expressway and Brooklyn Heights to the south, and the East River and Brooklyn Bridge Park to the west. The surrounding area consists of a mix of residential, commercial, and industrial uses, as well as a large amount of public open space located under the Brooklyn Bridge and the Brooklyn Queens Expressway. In recent years, Dumbo, a mixed-use residential and commercial area just north of the project area, has emerged as a premier job center for technology startups. Large 8 to 15-story commercial and mixed-use converted loft buildings are typical in Dumbo and south of the project in Fulton Ferry. The project area is within an M21 district that extends from the Brooklyn Bridge south to Red Hook, Brooklyn. Historically, light manufacturing zones extended to the north into Dumbo as well. The project area is located at the nexus of 3 historic districts, the Brooklyn Heights Historic District to the south, the Fulton Ferry Historic District to the northwest, and the Dumbo Historic District to the north. But the project itself does not have a historic district designation. The project area is located approximately 4 blocks from the High Street Brooklyn Bridge A and C station and half a mile from the Clark Street 2 and 3 station and the New York Street and the York Street F station. The project area is also served by the B25 bus, which runs along Old Fulton Street, as well as City Bike, which has stations on Old Fulton Street across from the project area, and the East River Ferry, which departs from Fulton Ferry Landing 1 block west of the project area. The project area is well served by open space, including the Brooklyn Bridge Park to the west, Hillside Park, Squibb Park, and Harry Chapin Playground to the south, Anchorage Plaza and Cadman Plaza to the east. Here you can see some photos of the surrounding area, including photos of the development site on the top left and photos of the non-applicant owned site on the bottom left. The project area is generally bounded by Old Fulton Street to the north, Hicks Street to the east, and Doughty Street to the south. 50 Old Fulton Street, the development site, includes an irregularly shaped 6,500 square foot through lot improved with a 1-story, approximately 6,500 square foot auto body shop, which has been used as an auto body shop since the late 1960s. 58 Old Fulton Street, the corner site, includes a 700 square foot lot improved with a 1 to 2-story, approximately 3,700 square foot building, which is also an auto body shop. 46 Old Fulton Street, a lot partially included in the project area, is a 4,600 square foot lot improved with a 4-story, approximately 16,000 square foot warehouse, the location of the eating and drinking establishment L&B Spumoni Gardens. The project area also includes a small triangular area south of the BQE at the intersection of Poplar and Hicks Street. The triangle includes the Poplar Street Community Garden, a 1,900 square foot green thumb garden, which is part of the map street and would therefore be unaffected by the zoning change. All West Old Fulton is proposing a 5-story, 85-foot-tall building that would include approximately 32,000 square feet of retail space on the cellar, ground, and second floors and office space on the 3rd through 5th floors. The applicant is targeting creative users such as technology startups, advertising, media, and design firms as office tenants. The proposed commercial and retail uses would be consistent with the active uses seen on the north side of Old Fulton Street and nearby in Dumbo and in Fulton Ferry. The new building's floor plates would be 6,500 square foot on each floor, resulting in 100% lot coverage. There would be no required accessory off-street parking and loading, and no parking or loading would be provided on the development site. The actions necessary to facilitate the project include a zoning map amendment to rezone the project area from an M21 to an M15 zoning district. M15 would be mapped between the south side of Old Fulton Street, the north side of Doughty Street, and the west side of Hicks Street to facilitate commercial and retail development. M15 is a moderate density light manufacturing district that allows 5 FAR of industrial and commercial uses and 6.5 FAR of community facility uses. The maximum base height in M15 districts is 85 feet or 6 stories, whichever is less, and the maximum building height is subject to a sky exposure plane. In a meeting on December 11th, the Community Board 2, voted to disapprove the project. In a resolution submitted to the Department of City Planning on January 27th, the Borough President disapproved the project with the condition that the Landmarks Preservation Commission expand the Fulton Ferry Historic District to include the project area prior to advancing a rezoning. The resolution further resolved that affordable art space and resiliency and sustainability measures be incorporated into the project, local and minority and women-owned businesses be retained, and the Department of Transportation submit comments to City Council regarding the potential effect of the BQE reconstruction on the rezoning area. Here you can see a map of the Fulton Ferry Historic District. As you can see, the project area is very close, about, with one lot in between, or about 40 feet between the project area and the historic district boundary. That is all.
Questions from the commission? Commissioner Dweck.
Has there been any response yet to the Borough President's comments?
So the applicant did submit a letter to the Borough President, which they will be following up on in more detail at the public hearing. Yeah.
Other questions? Commissioner Ortiz.
I have to say I'm sensitive to the community board's comments on the historic district and the proximity to the historic district, in part because this is such a prominent location. In order to get to the historic district, nearly everybody has to traverse this site, and I think it's important that we're mindful of that, and how this site will sort of maintain or support, enhance the experience of the visitor, because it's really an important tourism destination as well. So, I want to sort of state that for the record. I think we should take that into consideration.
Yeah.
And as this photo shows, the current gateway is pretty unimpressive. Other questions or comments? Okay, we'll see this at the public hearing on Wednesday.
The third item on our agenda, page 57, is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map amendment in Manhattan Community District 2. Our presenter is Allison Brown.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. 364 Avenue of the Americas is the project I'll be presenting today. Here we go. So Washington Place Associates LLC proposes a zoning map amendment to rezone 364 6th Avenue, or Avenue of the Americas, 124 Waverly Place, and 85 Washington Place from an R72 with C15 commercial overlay to an R72 with C25 commercial overlay. This project was certified by the Commission and referred to the community on November 12th, 2019. This project is scheduled for public hearing on Wednesday, February 5th. The project area, outlined in the dotted line, is located in the Greenwich Village neighborhood of Manhattan Community District 2. The surrounding area is zoned R72, R6, and C45, with C14 commercial overlays typical along 6th Avenue. The surrounding area contains a mix of residential, commercial, office, hotel, retail, and community facility uses. Buildings range from single-family townhouses to low-rise, mixed-use residential and commercial buildings. The project area is located within the Greenwich Village Historic District, designated in 1969. The project area has been zoned R72 with C15 commercial overlay since it was mapped in 1961. The applicant proposes to rezone the commercial overlay to a C25. So zooming into block 552, where the proposed rezoning is located, the block is characterized by mixed-use residential buildings and 2 public facility buildings. The proposed rezoning extends to a depth of 100 feet from 6th Avenue and will affect lots 71, 7501, and 46. 85 West Washington Place, lot 71, is improved with a 5,000 square foot 4-story structure with 6 dwelling units and a ground floor bar. 124 Waverly Place, or lot 46, is improved with a 5,000 square foot 4-story structure with 4 dwelling units and a first floor dry cleaner. And finally, 364 Avenue of the Americas, or lot 7501, is owned by the applicant and is improved with a 5-story, 66,000 square foot mixed-use building. 44,000 square feet of residential floor area, which contains 28 dwelling units, and approximately 22,000 square feet of commercial floor area on both the ground floor and cellar levels. Current commercial uses include a bank and a drugstore and a spa. The spa is located on the ground floor and cellar levels since fall of 2019, shortly before certification. Previously, the ground floor space was vacant for 2 years, and prior to the vacancy, it was an electronics retailer. The cellar space was previously vacant for 4 years, and prior to that, it was a clothing retailer. The proposed zoning change will have no effect on permitted bulk, but will expand the amount of permitted uses. C1 and C2 districts are both neighborhood commercial districts and permit a limited range of commercial uses and are subtly distinguished from each other by the uses allowed in each. In this diagram, we see that use groups 1 through 6 apply to each commercial overlay. In addition, under C2 districts, use groups 7, 8, 9, and 14 apply. This would allow uses such as home maintenance and repair shops, which is use group 7, amusement establishments, use group 8, or business services, use group 9. Use group 14 relates to boating-related activities, which most likely would not apply here. PCEs are not allowed in C1 districts, but are allowed via BSA special permit in C2 districts. The proposed rezoning will allow the owner to seek a BSA special permit to permit the existing PCE, the spa, which is located on the ground floor and cellar levels of the development site. The Community Board met on December 19th, 2019, and adopted a resolution of approval unanimously in favor. In a letter dated on January 22nd, 2020, the Borough President also recommended approval of the application with no conditions. As mentioned previously, the public hearing is scheduled for Wednesday, February 5th. The applicant will be available at the public hearing to respond to any further questions the Commission may have, and I am also available now to answer questions. Thank you.
Questions? Okay, we'll see this at the public hearing on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Okay. The fourth item on the agenda, page 81, is a pre-hearing item. Just going to note that this is for a continued hearing on 266 West 96th Street on Wednesday. Any questions on that? Okay. So we can move on to future votes. Later today, we will have a special meeting to consider the reports for the Lennox Terrace project. Here for a pre-vote discussion is Allison Brown.
Good afternoon again. So in advance of the special meeting later today, I am here to present the City Planning Commission modifications to the Lennox Terrace application. So the Commission had voiced concerns at the public hearing and post-hearing follow-up sessions, and the applicant has been responsive to these concerns and filed drawings this morning reflecting these modifications. So first, a modification to the site plan, which we can see here. The modification includes a provision of a circulation path labeled Public Walkway that will connect Lennox Avenue to West 134th Street and to Fifth Avenue. The public walkway will be open daily from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., and there will be pop signage located at each entrance along Lennox Avenue, West 134th Street, and Fifth Avenue, indicating the publicly accessible nature of the path and the hours of access. In addition, the historic entrance to 470 Lennox Avenue with cul-de-sac driveway has been modified to remove the proposed 8 surface parking spaces. The parking spaces will be moved to the new below-grade parking area, resulting in only 31 at-grade surface parking spaces in Lennox Terrace. The cul-de-sac has been narrowed and will only be used for drop-off and pickup or emergency access. Finally, department staff are advising a technical modification to the C15 commercial overlay to ensure the proposed commercial loading berths located on West 132nd Street are compliant. The applicant proposed C1 overlays to extend just to the envelope of proposed commercial buildings. However, the applicant also proposes 2 new loading berths along West 132nd Street, located approximately here and here. They are located within 30 feet of the boundary between the C15 and R8 district, which is not permitted. Therefore, the department staff recommend the commission modify the application to extend these commercial overlays to an additional 25 feet on each side. So along Lenox Avenue, the depth will increase from 200 feet to 225 feet, and along Fifth Avenue from 125 feet to 150 feet in order to ensure that the loading berths are compliant. These are all the modifications I have to present. Are there any further questions?
Could you go back to that drawing? I want to thank the Manhattan office for working to get an agreement on this publicly accessible area. We're pleased that there's not going to be parking along the Lenox Avenue frontage, making it a stronger pedestrian realm. And while not a direct through block, we think that the width of the planted areas in front of 470 will be inviting, and people will soon learn that you can get to the subway station by traversing this walkway. Questions? Vice Chair Knuckles.
The 31 spaces that would remain above ground, where would they be located?
So we can see them. There's always, there was previously proposed 38 spaces to remain above ground, or 39, and now there'll be 31. There's a surface parking area located here,
Right.
here, here.
So those will remain?
Those will remain.
Okay, all right. Gotcha.
Commissioner Burney.
There were a couple of issues that came up either at the last review or at the public hearing, and one had to do with congestion on the 2 and 3 subway station. Is there any follow-up or investigation on that?
The department spoke to the MTA, and the MTA concurred the findings in the EIS. There was no further discussion that I'm aware of beyond that.
So they didn't find an adverse impact, the MTA people?
Correct.
And another thing that came up was whether the 14 existing businesses would have the right of return at the rents they're paying now, and what would happen to them during construction if they would be temporarily relocated. Did they respond to that?
I believe the commission received letters previously from the applicant with their proposed plan for future retail and transition of retail. So I believe that was in a letter the commission received from the applicant prior to the January 21st public hearing, or sorry, post-hearing follow-up.
Okay, okay. And then the third thing was, and this was sort of a new one to me, the community board had made a case that there was some violation of the Voting Rights Act in terms of the dilution of the African-American voting block here. So did we get to the bottom of that, and do we understand that issue?
I'll note that all of these were covered at the post-hearing review session when you had just returned.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
so I missed the answer to that, okay.
And no, I'll be glad to have Susan Emron, our general counsel, can follow up with you on what she explained to the commission.
Okay, thank you.
January 6th review session.
No, that's right, I was away.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Anybody else?
Yes, Vice Chair Knuckles.
There was also concerns raised about the possibility of activating the dormant retail along Fifth Avenue, assuming construction went ahead, that space could be activated and utilized hopefully by community groups. Has there been any response from the applicants on that score?
Yes, similarly, there was in the same letter that I referenced before, the January 21st letter, that was in that retail plan indicating their proposal for existing retail and new retail. The applicant is hoping to activate the space in some way, but there has been no formal commitment.
This is in the letter that was in the package from Fox Rothschild on behalf of the applicant, the second point that's addressed there. I also anticipate that this may well be involved in discussions before the council as well. Other questions, comments? Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Okay, for Wednesday, February 5th, staff prepared reports for Public School 31 Landmark Rescission, East 175th Street and East 180th Street Bridge Rehabilitation. Okay, yes. And then here for discussion, also on for a vote on February 5th, the C7 Baychester Avenue rezoning, and Christine Camilleri is here for a pre-vote discussion.
Good afternoon. And I'm here to follow up on a post-hearing item. Just as a reminder, this is an application by the Department of City Planning proposing a zoning map amendment to rezone privately owned sites within an area that includes Block 5141, lots 101, 102, and a portion of Lot 110. And the application proposes a district change from C7 to C82. And the proposed rezoning area is located in the northeastern Bronx in the neighborhood of Baychester. And there were several items raised at the public hearing held on January 8th that I'm here to provide additional information on. The first item is regarding the westernmost portion of the rezoning area, which is Lot 101. That is the subject of an ongoing investigation that's being conducted by the Department of Buildings. And the photo that is on this slide is an image of that lot. The purpose of that investigation is to determine the legality of the signage and structures highlighted on this slide. In addition to that, the DOB is investigating the cause of the wind turbine collapse that took place on December 30th, 2019. And a detailed letter that explains the DOB's findings so far has been included in your packages, but I'd also like to walk through a few of the a few key findings that have been determined so far and are highlighted in that letter. But first, just to walk through the structures that are highlighted on this slide that are the subject of that investigation. There is on the corner of the portion of Lot 101 that's at the corner of the service road of the I-95 and Bartow Avenue, there's a trifold sign that is currently actually turned off. That's not captured by this image, but it's currently not illuminated, although it is an illuminated advertising sign. One of the panels, the one that faces Co-op City, the one facing the north, was actually knocked off when the turbine fell, but the rest of the structure is still intact. It measures about 60 feet above curb level. The tallest of the structures is the existing monopole structure, which is the one pictured in the middle. That is what served as the base for the wind turbine that was constructed on top. And that measures about 150 feet. There is also a smaller sign that's on the right of this image that's slightly obscured by the trees. But it's really the two taller structures that have really been more of the kind of source of community concern in the past. So the investigation is ongoing, but as the Department of Buildings notes in the letter, the entirety of Lot 101 has been determined to lie within 200 feet of the arterial highway. As a result of that, it is the case that advertising signs are not permitted. Limited accessory signage may still be permitted in the future, provided that other zoning and building code is the signage is demonstrated to comply with zoning and building code. But just to note, accessory signage can only display images that are associated with the uses on the zoning lot itself. The proposed C82 district would potentially limit the height of any future accessory signage, and the existing C7 district does not impose a height limit on accessory signage, which is important to point out here. Just to summarize what those rules are, the C82 district that is proposed limits the height of accessory signage to either 40 feet or 58 feet, depending on the illumination. And there have been a few, and I will mention also along with that, that it is unlikely that the signage that is on site today would be grandfathered considering these rules. There's been a few enforcement actions taken to date by the Department of Buildings as well following the turbine collapse. 2 notices of violation for failure to maintain have been issued, along with a stop work order for the entirety of Lot 101. And as the letter also states, for the monopole, that's the structure that was in the middle, that was the base of the turbine, a lawful use for that structure has to be established by the owner. And if that is not, it's not possible to establish a lawful use for that, the Department of Buildings may order it to be taken down by a commissioner's order or another enforcement mechanism as needed. Along with the audit of the signage permits, the investigation into the turbine collapse is ongoing and being conducted in partnership with the third-party engineering firm. The stop work order will remain in place until the cause of the investigation, or the cause of the collapse, excuse me, is determined. In addition to the investigation, there were a few other items raised at the January 8th public hearing that I'd like to speak about now. The first regarding outreach. The Department of City Planning briefed Bronx Community District 10 on June 11th, which was held several months in advance before certification, which took place in September. On October 2nd, another briefing was held with Community District 10's Housing and Zoning Subcommittee, and then a public hearing was held in Co-op City on October 17th. I will mention Co-op City residents were in attendance and leadership were in attendance at the October 2nd meeting that was held at Bronx Community District 10, and there are a few Co-op City residents that are members of Community Board 10 as well. When the Bronx office became aware that River Bay's Board of Directors, which is Co-op City's managing entity, had concerns about the application, we met with them on December 13th to kind of better understand those concerns. And DCP has been in contact with the council member's office on an ongoing basis following the commitment that was made to update the C7 zoning. We committed also to updating the district to something more appropriate, due in large part to our understanding that the outdated provisions and specifically the signage regulations were a concern for Co-op City's residents. At the public hearing on the 8th, we also heard concerns related to some of the uses that would be permitted as of right in C82 districts, and crematoriums in particular were raised as a potential concern. There's a little bit of information I'd like to share related to that. Crematoriums are actually heavily permitted by the state of New York, specifically the State Department's Division of Licensing and Department of Environmental Conservation are involved with that permitting that is required. Human crematoriums are also, a city council vote is required to cite them. Regarding animal crematoriums and kennels, the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene confirmed with us that they do not have plans of citing any further shelters, animal shelters, nor do they have a need for crematoriums along this corridor. And we do not have reason to believe there's a market demand for privately owned shelters or crematoriums that would displace the active commercial uses on these sites in the future. Lastly, on the point that was raised regarding comments that noted that the C43 district would be a preferable alternative to the proposed C82 district. We'd like to note that the C82 district was identified as the district that best matched, aligned with the existing uses on the site, and that was least likely to induce change along the corridor. A C43 district does have an R6 equivalent and would potentially permit residential development in the future and would be much more likely to induce change in this location. And I'll pause now for questions.
We went into a lot of detail about the status of the, what's going on with the buildings department because they have been very cooperative. It's not necessarily related to our land use determination, but given the testimony, we thought it important to get as much information as possible. Questions? Commissioner Marin.
And I'm sorry if I'm going to ask questions about that may have been posed and answered on January 8th because I wasn't here. I was sick that day. But I'm trying to better understand. I know we talked about the sign earlier, the existing trifold sign, and we said that that sign would be grandfathered in. Is there a change in thought of that? Or?
So our understanding of where the investigation, which is still ongoing, stands is that due to that sign being located within 200 feet of the arterial and due to it having been filed as an advertising sign, that in all likelihood will not be grandfathered. And so, you know, there's actions to be taken by the Department of Buildings in that regard, but our understanding, due to the 200-foot, that distinct rule, that is the case in both, I should say, C7 districts and C82 districts.
So originally, I know that we've had sort of a couple of discussions on this, and that originally the sign was not an advertising sign, right? It was an introduction to Freedom Land.
There have
correct.
Well, I guess recently, I know there's been a lot of history with the signage on this site. I think most recently, the sign that is there today was filed as an advertising sign. So, yeah, and I think the images on those signs have changed over time, but right now, or most recently, it's been advertising uses, not necessarily associated with what is on the zoning lot itself.
I get it. I'm just trying to understand it because I know we did have conversations earlier about the pole itself and whether or not it would stay because of what it was when it was. I just want to have a more concise understanding of why the sign is going to be is now deemed not to be grandfathered in with the action. So I get that.
Sure.
The monopole structure. Do we know when that was erected? I mean, I only ask these questions because I've seen these two signs as long as I can, these two poles as long as I can remember. So I'm trying to understand where the history of where it came in, how it came in.
Yeah.
And I understand why it needs to go out. And I did see the video. Thank you, Ryan. It was very disturbing.
Yep. That's right. So I think that understanding, it was erected around 2015. Both of these structures, there was a lot of, it's a little hard to keep track because there was a lot of litigation related to the monopole in particular, but I think 2015 is what the records we've seen
is it
show.
just the pole that's there?
So the signage, actually, let me flip back to the image because it might be helpful to.
That was huge.
Yeah. So as of Wednesday night, which I assume is still the case today, unless much has happened since then, the trifold sign on the corner of Bartow Avenue and that Baychester, the service road to the I-95, is still there. Two of the two panels that face Bartow Avenue is still on the sign, and the monopole is still there, and the smaller sign is still there. It's just the difference is the trifold sign is turned off.
So the monopole was designed to hold 54 sign panels that would be lit, and they would be 12 inches. They would have been 12 inches apart, and there was a case at the Board of Standards and Appeals where the DOB had determined that constituted one single sign, and so there was still litigation ongoing about that. But the design of the monopole is for a much larger quote sign than sort of we see at the trifold sign, which is there today.
So you mentioned the BSA. They went to the BSA. Is that the case?
There was an appeal. So the DOB
after this action, or before this action.
Before this action, this was in 2015, and the DOB had determined and denied them a sign permit, and they appealed to the board, and the board concurred with DOB. And there was a lawsuit, and my understanding is that the first sort of circuit had upheld the board's decision and DOB's decision. I don't know where the further appeals go.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Cirillo.
So spending another minute on the sign issue.
Sure.
And I recall the CA2 implications from, I recall discussing the implications of the CA2 in the application on Richmond Avenue and Victory Boulevard on Staten Island. So some of what I'm thinking about is coming out of that previous discussion. And I guess this could just be more clarification than the new information. But I know that the way this is being explained is in terms of we'll call it the illegality of the signage based on its location to the arterial. But we're referring very specifically to the fact that Lot 101 lies within the 200-foot prohibition area. And I don't have in this presentation in front of me the rezoning area. Are there any lots that would be permissible to have signage under the CA2 under the rezoning?
Sure, yeah, and actually.
And what has the community felt about that? This particular one obviously would be illegal, and that may be the reason, obviously, why it can't be grandfathered in. But are there any other locations, and has the community weighed in on those locations?
Sure, so this just to show the rezoning area. So Lot 101 is actually the lot that borders Baychester Avenue and the I-95 to the west. The lot that is to the right of that, to the east of that, is Lot 102. So conceivably, I think Lot 101 kind of is all within 200 feet. There may be signage permitted on Lot 102, but that hasn't really been the subject of this investigation, nor has similar signage been erected on that site. I will also say all commercial districts permit some degree of signage. It's really the C7 district is particularly liberal when it comes to that due to its kind of nature being it's reserved for amusement parks.
Right, so do we, I guess then the reverse of that is, would this be a more restrictive?
Oh, far more restrictive.
Far more restrictive, so.
This is the opposite of the Staten Island where we went from a lower signage. Here we're going from a limited height and a monopole that's 150 feet tall to under 60.
Great, because I mean, it's important to focus on Lot 101 and those implications, but I wasn't really sure if there would be a greater implication that we weren't focused on if under the rezoning. So I understand it's more restrictive. Okay, that's great. And I guess the quick follow-up to that is, and I understand the discussion that may have taken place about crematoriums. I remember that issue on the Staten Island application as well. But are there any other uses that the community discussed that were potential concerns for them that are outside of this sort of summary?
Sure. So outside of the public hearing, we've heard concern about gas stations, but that's been really one or two residents who have mentioned that at public meetings. I will say Lot 101 did have a gas station on it historically. Many years ago, those concerns were just related to traffic and kind of bottlenecking on that corner. That's really the only other specific use that, other than the shelters, animal crematoriums, human crematoriums that we've heard. I think, but generally concerned about use group 16, which includes those things and semi-industrial uses.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
And we can have a pop quiz for the commission. I learned earlier today that there is a human crematorium and in the Bronx. Would you know?
No, I did.
Woodlawn Cemetery, a very appropriate location.
Near my house.
Yeah. Oh. Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Ortiz.
Maybe this will be the last sign question, I don't know. But just for clarification, so the trifold we found is not permitted. There's a notice violation. Will they be required to take that down, or will they just strip it of its sign and leave it as litter?
At this point, we don't know. Everything is in the Department of Buildings' hands. There is an active investigation underway as to whether it's lawful, whether it would be grandfathered, whether it would be required to be removed.
And is that something that could be discussed? Because, you drive down the BQE and you see so many of these signs that the structure remains, and it's just litter, right? And as we're looking at this action, if in fact, they it's not permitted, can we request that they take it down?
We could actually include that in our report, that if the Department of Buildings determines that it's not lawful, that the commission would urge that they consider requiring a removal order.
Great, that's what I was looking for, thank you.
Other questions?
Well, just to clarify,
Vice Chair Nichols.
is the fact that both of these poles are on are within lot 101, right?
That's right.
And lot 101 is within 200 feet of the arterial highway, right?
Yes.
So is that not dispositive of their lawful, of the compliance issue?
This is part of the Department of Buildings investigations, and so we can't state definitively. That is what Buildings is looking at. I've spoken with the commissioner about it. I was pleased by the letter, the seriousness with which they're taking the issue and looking not just at what I think precipitated the move, which was the wind turbine, but just more broadly at the status of the signs on the site. It's surprising how this tiniest of actions, of what we thought was a surgical action, has just unleashed learning about zoning for crematoriums and monopoles. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Also scheduled for decision on February 5th, Grand Avenue and Pacific Street. 271 Seabreeze Avenue. 8118 13th Avenue, 47 West 28th Street Building, 49 West 28th Street Building, 51 West 28th Street Building, 53 West 28th Street Building, 55 West 28th Street Building, the Tin Pan Alley landmark designations. There's a question.
And on those, I had asked for a comprehensive understanding of the potential for development rights transfers. Is that a revealing image, or is there no there?
The limitations, we looked at this, and the limitations on the 20% of the allowed floor area doesn't actually, I think you can get maybe a smidge more if you like on each of the lots, if you combined all the zoning lots and then sort of spread it out. It doesn't result in any measurable. In fact, I think you run out of floor area by the time you get to the sort of fourth thing. I have a very rough thing I can share with you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll send that
After
around.
the fact, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
100 Pearl Street is also scheduled for a decision. Okay. The Queens Boulevard MIH mapping. Okay. And the Queens Community Board 7 office space lease. Okay. Moving on to post-hearing follow-ups, we have Rochester Sidam. Any further questions on that? 90 Sand Street rezoning. The 52nd Street rezoning. And Union Square South Hotel special permit. Any further questions on that? Okay.
Okay, so I think that is the end of the review session, and we will now go into the City Planning Commission special meeting.
Yes, this is the City Planning Commission special meeting held in the City Planning Commission hearing room, Lower Concourse, 120 Broadway. Today is Tuesday, February 3rd, 2020. I will now call the roll. Chair Lago.
Here.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Here.
Commissioner Burney.
Here.
Commissioner Capelli. Here. Commissioner Cirillo. Here. Commissioner De La Uz. Commissioner Dweck.
Here.
Commissioner Edie.
Here.
Commissioner Knight.
Here.
Commissioner Levin.
Here.
Commissioner Ring.
Here.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Here.
Commissioner Rampashad.
Here.
A quorum is present. Let's turn to page 1 of the calendar, the report section, Borough of Manhattan, calendar numbers 1 through 5, CD10. Calendar number 1, C200050, SZSM, as modified. Calendar number 2N200051ZRM. Calendar number 3C200052ZMM as modified. Calendar number 4, C200054ZSM. Calendar number 5, N200053ZAM. In the matter of applications for zoning map and zoning text amendments, special permits, and an authorization concerning Lennox Terrace, for favorable reports on calendar numbers 1 through 4, and for adoption on calendar number 5, Chair Lago.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles. Commissioner Burney.
Yes.
Commissioner Capelli.
Yes.
Commissioner Cirillo.
Yes.
Commissioner De La Hoz.
I'm just going to say that though the proposal has some aspects which could be viewed favorably by some, including improving the existing open space and the 100% affordable housing building and the recently proposed improvements to the proposed public walkway, I believe the proposal remains flawed at this time, in my opinion. I think the impacts to both current residential and commercial tenants at Lennox Terrace, as well as the mitigation to address those anticipated impacts, remains insufficient. Efforts to preserve the existing affordable housing and making capital improvements to those existing rent-stabilized units is a critical component of any proposal, and that those questions remain unanswered as discussions between the owner, HPD, and the Lennox Terrace tenants to extend improvements in affordability have not been finalized. As such, I vote no.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
I largely concur with Commissioner De La Hoz. I do believe that in a fully baked plan, the land use actions that are narrowly before us could very well be appropriate, but there are too many aspects of this plan that remain to be resolved by other participants in the planning process, and for that reason, at this point, I abstain.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz. Commissioner Rampashad. Favorable reports have been adopted on calendar numbers 1 through 4, and calendar number 5 has been adopted.
And I believe that there is no other item before the commission.
No, Madam Chair.
So the meeting is closed.
It did.